So we're back again, and now we are officially, I don't know if you guys realize this, we are officially the InterMat podcast. The name change happened last week. So welcome officially to the InterMat podcast. This is the crew that you're going to be sitting with and listening to our bullshit. So I know there's
Plenty of
people
that.
lucky for all you fans, you get to
Apologies.
listen to us. Isn't that the best?
It's
Um,
better than looking at us, I would think. Maybe
That's
maybe I'll
fair.
speak for myself.
I mean, you
My wife would
can
agree.
you can watch this or at least just listen to this and just have it
Yeah.
running in the background. You don't have to actually look at our faces. Just listen to our stupidity and we'll have some fun. Um, but no, I mean, in the spirit of the hat that Kevin is wearing, we're gonna talk Olympic stuff today. And I first want to start with the reallocation, and I had a chance to talk to Kamal Bey, who was part of the 16 wrestlers that were reallocated into the Olympic Games. Great interview. If you haven't already listened to that, head over to the InterMat page on YouTube and take a listen to all his comments. But it was pretty awesome to hear how all of that went from Kamal, where he got the email, got the phone call, had to kind of keep it under wraps that he was into the Olympics for about a week before UWW started putting some things out, before any of the Russian wrestle Instagram started posting things about how Chamizo was getting in as well. But what I took from it was that even when they went to last chance qualifier, they knew that there was a good chance that they were going to have the possibility of being into the Olympics. And Chamizo should have never been left out. I mean, anyone that has watched his matches and the corruption and the fact that you can sanction the referees, but not go back and say, this person was cheated out of an allocation spot and essentially just give him one. I know you kind of have to go by protocol, but when things like that happen, we've seen crazier things happen when it
Mhm.
comes to people getting allocation points. So, he had a hell of a ride when it came to getting allocated, and I'm glad that he is in because he certainly did deserve it. But then, like I said, Kamal Bey into the Olympics. Now we have four Greco wrestlers, four of the six. All of our freestyle wrestlers are in. But I mean, I think and I hope that something breaks through, right? I think for me, I can remember when I first really truly started watching Greco, and it was kind of this class of guys that we're seeing right now, right? It was the Ellis Colemans and the guys that have made the Olympic team that has started to really make things a lot more exciting. There was more athleticism and things like that, and obviously, more people in this country are paying attention to folk style and freestyle more than anything, but Greco is hopefully coming along, and he talked about D'Angelo Hancock and their relationship, and I had a chance to talk to D'Angelo today when I posted some of those clips, and you know he is super proud of Kamal and knew that Kamal would always become an Olympian one way or another, whether it was on his own merit, which I mean he did get there on his own merit, or whether he was getting a reallocation point. But I think it's awesome, right, that we're getting another Greco guy in there, one who is as explosive as Kamal is, and somebody who I think we all kind of pointed to and said he's going to do some damage on the senior level. He's a junior world champion, but has yet to break through on the world stage. So maybe this is the time where it happens. When you guys saw that there was reallocation and we're getting another Greco guy in, what did you think of all of the kind of reallocation craziness before we get into kind of the other half of this that people are talking about? But what were your thoughts on the reallocations?
I was really happy to see Kamal get in. I was at the Olympic trials and getting to interact with those guys and talk to them a little bit and get to know them a little bit. Kamal was super interesting. I was very impressed by his poise for being as young as he is. Really like his outlook on just kind of on everything. So I'm really happy to see him able to get to that big stage and hopefully make some noise in Paris.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always been a super interesting guy, very lively kind of personality, and
Mhm.
I think that's why people wanted him to be the lively person on the mat that he is off the mat, right? Because there's marketability when it comes to personality, and I think that the Greco team really wanted to kind of hang their hat on his personality as well as his athleticism and his ability to win. We got that also, like I said, with Hancock, who had the personality, and you're seeing more of that obviously now on the WWE stage, but he was also winning medals and he was an Olympian as well. And he was continuing to grow and get better each time out. So I think that, they wanted to see Kamal as well as Hancock do great things because of the marketability of what they were doing. And I think we also get that with Joe Rao, who qualified as well. But Austin, Kevin, what did you guys think of the reallocation and once the news kind of settled in, what were your thoughts?
Go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I was gonna say like when Chamizo got shafted the way he did,
Yeah.
like it's only fitting that karma does work in mysterious ways. He actually is going there now, which is really cool. Um, and Kamal Bay, it's really cool to see someone like that, especially in the Greco side, who I mean might get some crap for this, but Greco isn't the most exciting sport to watch to the
How
normal
dare you?
person, to the normal wrestling fan, right? And having someone like Kamal Bay in there who is a human highlight reel that even if he doesn't come home with a medal, we're going to see some kind of big move, some kind of freak athletic thing he does out there, right? And that will still get more eyes and, could lead to more popularity to Greco as well, so I think it's not going to happen overnight, but I think getting 4 out of 6 qualified and, one of those guys walking away with a medal would be a pretty cool deal for USA Wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about the marketability piece, you know what also helps with marketing? Throwing people through the air, right?
Yeah.
And they do a whole hell of a lot of that. So I'm really excited. Kamal Bay has always been fun to watch. I remember watching his Junior World Gold match. I mean, that one was, if anybody hasn't seen it, like a quick walkthrough, what I was like 17-15 or something. It was like back and forth. These dudes were just throwing each other all over the place. It was the most exciting Greco match. I'll hopefully it'll get beat by some other Greco match in the future. But to this point, it's the best one, I'm most exciting one, I should say, that I've ever seen. So yeah, we're waiting for him to kind of take that next leap. And sometimes it just takes the chance to get there, right? So I'm sure he's not going to take it lightly. And I haven't watched the video yet, but I'm going to watch that tomorrow to get some more insight on that interview with him. But yeah, he's been fun to watch forever, man.
Yeah, he touched on a couple of things. I made sure to ask him about the coaching changes that have happened within USA Greco, and then also what WCAP has done for him. Just with training and how the WCAP and USA Wrestling portion of things are starting to kind of come together. Because obviously, as we've seen, WCAP, there's so many WCAP versus WCAP guys and girls that are
Mhm.
wrestling specifically in Greco. It's guy versus guy WCAP singlet all the time. So what their training regimen is and what they're bringing to the Greco side of things is incredible. So if you're going to mirror anybody's training style, it's certainly should be them. And he talked about that of just how they are keeping him, how they kept him training. When he didn't qualify, when he lost in the finals, um, they continue to just stay the course. But he talks about how there's just been a lot of ups and downs. And, Linlin was his guy. Linlin came to him when he was in high school and said, "What do you think about wrestling Greco?" And he was like, "I'm all about it." Right. And, um, so, Linlin was his guy, but ultimately he just wants to see USA Greco continue to grow. And he even says, "I'm the face of USA Greco." He's like, "I want to take on that mantle where the other guys can just go out and wrestle and not worry about these things. If something needs to be done, I'm happy to raise my hand and do it." And obviously, Joe Rao is his senior to that. And he talked about him and Rao and how they've also been very connected for years as well. And it's just one of those things where there's such a tight knit group that you can't wait to see how things start to kind of take off. And, you know, everything that Rao went through and then everything that Kamal has gone through. And, and then you have some new blood on the team, and then you got Adam Kuhn on the team as well again. So, there's some seasoned vets that are on this Greco team this year that I cannot wait to see how they do and how things really start to take off.
Well, that's an you talk about team chemistry, right? And obviously in more team-centric sports, that's a thing. But anytime you talk to successful teams, even in wrestling, I mean, there has to be some sort of camaraderie there, right? I would expect that a lot of these guys have been on world teams together, have traveled together, obviously have trained together. So, yeah, hopefully that manifests itself in Paris.
Hopefully. And on the other side of this reallocation is the controversy of Russia not being allowed to go. First, it was, these 16 wrestlers are being pulled out of competition, and we're replacing them, with this set of men and women. And now it comes out that Russia isn't sending anyone to the Olympic Games. And now the stupidity starts to brew. And I'm just gonna go head first with it. There's not gonna be an asterisk on anyone's medal. There's just not, because in sports, shit happens. There have been times where each one of us, I'm sure in our careers, has either been hurt, has been sick, has missed the competition, but you don't take anything away from the people that showed up. Like, they don't control the geopolitical nonsense that is going on, but the IOC has the power and authority to do what they feel is correct. And it's not like the IOC is just coming in and doing this specifically for the Olympics. Shadjalayev wasn't able to get to two qualifiers or two ranking tournaments during the year because of things like this. So this isn't something that just popped up just now. Shadjalayev is, one of the faces of wrestling, and he was unable to compete in the other ranking tournament. So if you read the tea leaves of any of this, you saw that this was going to be coming. But what I truly want to address is the stupidity of people saying that this diminishes things, or that it's going to be like 1984, no, it's 2024, and shit happens, guys. And Kyle Dake, Spencer Lee, Kyle Snyder, Helen Maroulis, none of them control who their opponent is. All they control is how they do themselves, not who's across the mat from them. So that's not going to put any sort of stain on anything. The IOC has done some other stupid things in within wrestling. I mean, think about it. The doping scandal where they were banned. However, anyone that passed a drug test was still able to compete, but you're not getting any points. Like, that's not a banning. All you're saying is that the name of Russia is no longer there. And that's the only thing that they banned. They didn't ban the wrestlers. This is the first time that you're truly seeing a team be banned, at least in the last couple of Olympic Games. So address it that way, right? Like, no one had an issue when the anti-doping came out and they said that they were pulling them out of competition, only to essentially give them a mulligan and say, hey, pass a drug test and you can compete. So I honestly, I think it's dumb for anyone to say that there's an asterisk on anything, and to, because none of the people with all these Twitter fingers are going to go to Kyle Dake and say, good job, Kyle, but you didn't beat Sidikov. You didn't beat Kadi. So your medal, while it is gold, it doesn't really mean as much.
Well,
No,
and don't
forget
you think
that.
those guys wanted to wrestle those guys too? Like at the
Kyle
end of the
Dake just did
day,
an interview. I was just
yeah.
listening to it before we came on, and he did an interview with Piles, where Piles is asking him about the entire bracket just changing. And he's like, I don't control that. He's like, but I wanted those matches back.
Mhm.
I wanted to wrestle both of those guys and get those matches, and I can't now. But he even talked about, maybe I can go some other route of wrestling Sidikov, even if it's not at the Olympic Games, because I want that match again.
Mhm.
These guys want they want the best person out there on the map, but they don't control that. They only control themselves, and hopefully they are healthy and ready to go to work when that whistle blows.
100%. I mean, like, I don't know. I think 1984 shouldn't have an asterisk either. I think the people who show up wrestle, and that's what you do. It's like any other tournament. I made a joke in the group chat, like I can't claim that I should have won. You know, I didn't qualify, and I'm a bad wrestler, so I couldn't have done that anyway. But outside of that, it's like it's insane for anybody to be like, well, if Russia was there, then what? You know why Russia's not there? Russia voted not to be there, right?
Exactly.
Like, I mean, there's also the geopolitical stuff that's going on, right? But, at the end of the day, they chose not to. So you can't choose not to show up and then be like, yeah, but, my
Let's
opinion.
also, take into account the fact that it's not the best Russian wrestlers aren't just in Russia. They're scattered throughout multiple countries. I mean, you
Wait,
have
what?
Russians wrestling for Bahrain. That's
Yeah.
not very Russian. So let's not act like, just because they chose this one set of group of wrestlers to be out,
Mhm.
that's not hugely impacting the overall field. You still have these large brackets to get through. You're still going to have to beat everybody in front of you. And guess what? These are the best guys in the world. It's the Olympic Games. It's not like it's some slub off the street you're just pulling in to go on the mat and see what happens. It's the best people in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen anyone that has ever wrestled in the Olympics or at a high level like that say there should be an asterisk. I mean, maybe I missed
Right.
some, but the vast majority of people that compete at this level are probably upset they're not getting that match, similar to what Kyle Dake was saying, right? These guys they want to beat the best. They're not going to be there, so like it's next man up. It doesn't concern these top guys or nor should it, right? Because they have to focus on them, what they're going to do. They can't be worrying about all this other BS on the outside. So yeah, a lot of those Twitter fingers are, just the average fans from forums that aren't really in the know or what's going on and don't have the best opinions a lot of time, But yeah, I don't
But
want
we
to
hope
rock
you're
any,
listening.
I don't want to rock any feathers here, but it's just my
Oh no, I want
observation.
feathers to be completely ruffled. Like I hope that anyone listening or watching this gets pissed off because you're stupid for even thinking that it's going to diminish anything. Like you are. I mean, and I'm gonna give credit where credit is due. Like I said, Piles did a really good interview with Kyle Dake, but he also had a really good point where he pointed out that Russia only had one champion on their Olympic team from last year. Like
Yeah.
one. There's one
Earl's
guy that won a
breakdown.
title in 2023 that was on their Olympic team this year.
Earl did a fantastic job breaking that down in his article,
Yeah.
just kind of listing all these things off. I mean, even Sadulayev, like you said, I mean, he wasn't even top
And and
last year.
and that's the
Uh,
thing. Are we gonna say, oh well, he was hurt? He showed up, he wrestled, he lost. I don't care if he was hurt because if you really want to get technical, Jordan Burroughs won a world title with a broken ankle.
Mhm.
Like, so I don't really care that
and Kurt
Sadulayev was
Angle did
hurt
it with a broken
with
fucking
a
neck.
broken friggin' neck, right? So no, there is no asterisk on a medal that is won that you have sacrificed for 4 years. You've put in the work at world championships, at rankings tournaments, at trials, in the wrestling room, making weight, sacrificing being away from your family, sticking to your diet, training when you don't feel like training. The number of guys that have put in all of it, like, and then you're going to say that, hey, I know that, this only comes every 4 years and you put in, I don't know, thousands of hours of work and you made weight and you sacrificed and you did all these things, but you didn't beat the guy from Russia. So your medal,
You,
eh,
you, you beat 3 Russians along the way, but
yeah,
not the
yeah.
other one.
Yeah, yeah, go figure, right? Like and that's the funny thing about it, and you pointed it out, like Russians aren't just wrestling for Russia anymore, and Americans aren't just wrestling for America anymore, right? Like there's a number of guys that are spread out throughout the Olympic Games that train here but represent other countries, and it's not just exclusive to United States. So the stupidity of people thinking that this diminishes anything. Tournament's not as tough. Big deal. Spencer Lee didn't wrestle in one NCAA championship, didn't diminish the person that ended up winning. And he even wrestled in the last one and he lost. So it doesn't elevate, doesn't diminish anything. You go out there, you wrestle, you put it all on the line, and you get the job done, right? So I don't understand why anyone would say that there is I mean, no, I shouldn't say that. I do understand why people say it because they need to have some sort of quantifying level of superiority to say, oh, well, this, that, and whatever. No, you're wrong. Sorry, but you are. And I'm sure that there's a number of faceless Twitter accounts who are going to let us have it maybe, whenever this comes out. But like, it just, guys, it's just stupid. It really is a stupid way of thinking.
My dad always used to say something to the effect of, "It's great to have stupid people around because it makes the level of competition that much easier." So
I mean, honestly, for me, I think it's just kind of karma when it comes to Russia. Because like I said, they were banned in 2020 when they honestly weren't. They just
mhm.
had to they just had a flag that had Olympic rings on it, or Russia didn't show up in the medal count. And I mean, for the last couple of years, it's been what AIN on everything. So it doesn't really make a difference. You still have to go out there and compete. We've seen our guys lose to people from all different countries. It's not going to make a bit of difference in my mind. Obviously, if you want to get technical, yes, the 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 difficulty does drop. I'll give it to you. The difficulty of the entire bracket does drop, but there is no guarantee that Sidikov makes it to the finals. There's no guarantee that Sadulayev makes it to the finals. There's not one. As much as Kyle Dake would love to wrestle those guys again, as much as Kyle Snyder would most likely love to wrestle Sadulayev again, there's not even a guarantee that he gets to them, or that or that Sadulayev gets to Snyder. There's not one. Just because
Well,
the brackets are tougher doesn't mean that the matchup happens.
even with Sidikov being out, they just put Chamizo in. It's not
Yes,
like that's easy, you know? Like
still a world champ,
still tough. So yeah.
still a multiple time world
Chamizo's
medalist.
way cooler too.
So cool.
The funny thing about all of it though is that they can't get into Paris, but Sidikov is here in the States right now. He's at Rutgers doing a camp currently. And Yaroslav Slavakuski is translating everything that he's saying. I saw a clip today where
Oh, that's cool.
he's giving technique and saying everything that he's doing with his stance. And Yaroslav is standing there and he's translating everything that he is saying for the entire group of people that are in the room of whatever Sidikov is saying. So it was like a really interesting clip. I forget who posted it, but I'm sure it'll circulate at some point. But yeah, Sidikov is in New Jersey. Hopefully they introduce pork roll to him because sure he'd be really cool to see. I had some
There's another really good 74 kilo guy that's not too far from Jersey, who was also an Olympic champion that they probably could have grabbed for a clinic. But maybe Jordan was busy with his 12 kids. Not sure.
I honestly think that Jordan Burroughs is laying low right now. Um I sent him a text. I think I might have said this after your internet went out last week, but I sent him a text a couple weeks ago. He got back to me like a week later, which is honestly a shorter time frame than normal. Um, Jordan takes a little bit to get back to you, but he does get back to you. If it is
He's never gotten back to me.
if it is important, if it is important, I texted him today for his birthday, but Didn't hear back. So I'm sure he's, having dinner with the family, everything else. His wife will get back to me very quickly. Um, but he was just like, I'm laying low right now, enjoying family time, but I don't think he's done wrestling. We did talk about this last week, but um Robbie, you weren't on, so I want to kind of hear your perspective on it. Do you think he's done, or do you
No,
think that
he's
he
not
is
done.
coming
He's
back?
he's coming back. I think he at least makes one more run, if not at non Olympic weight worlds, at least for next year's worlds. I don't think he is as fierce of a competitor as he is. I cannot imagine him wanting to go out on the note that he went out on, and that's
Yeah.
just I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to want to dictate it. I think he's going to want to go out on his terms, and he's still one of the best in the world. So why not? I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, I mean those trials are in September for
mhm.
non-Olympic weight worlds. So I think we see him, and nothing is official. I'm hearing different dates and different locations that I'm not going to put out there until USA Wrestling does. Um, but I think that he does make an appearance, and I've said
If they
this.
could have those in Charlottesville, that'd be pretty cool.
I don't think they're going to be in Charlottesville.
If I call Rich Bender, see what he
Uh,
has to say.
Given the internet situation in all of Virginia, I don't even think that's a very good place to have it. Somebody unplugs one thing, or mom picks up the phone and the internet goes out, just like
Yep. Yep.
just like
In
back in the
fairness,
90s.
I'm in the sticks north of Charlottesville. I'm not actually in the Charlottesville proper. But as we're
I'm sure it's
talking
a huge
about,
difference, Robbie.
it is they have real internet there. It's not like satellites and dial up and codes and stuff. But as we're talking about stupid things on forums, I I'll never understand the appeal of forums. It's never been something I've liked. Never
Me
been.
neither. Willie loves them.
Willie loves them. He'll tell you too. He loves it. It's his thing. He started him back on InterMat for that very reason because he
Yep.
loves them. I it just makes my brain hurt
Yeah.
anytime I try to read any of them. But there was a post that I saw that was linked on Twitter that because Jordan got picked to do the broadcast that he's going to make it all about him and try to take the shine away from the Olympians. It's like no, that's not. It's come on, guys, come on. Let's
Jordan Jordan is brought in to be Jordan, and
Hmm.
they ask for his perspective and what he would do in a lot of those situations. To call up the whole thing with him and Srirachi, like they asked him, DC asked him, would you be going after his injured leg? Yes,
and the answer is always yes.
he called it back afterwards, where he said it again after the tournament. But the whole premise of the question came from DC, and then everybody kind of went off the rails about all this crazy nonsense. Like Jordan doesn't make stuff about him. It's not his MO, but he is not brought in to be a color commentator. He's not brought in to be a play-by-play guy. He's brought in to be Jordan Burroughs' wrestling expert, somebody who knows every single thing essentially about wrestling. If there was black belts in wrestling, he would certainly be one of them. And that's what he is brought in to do. He's not brought in to be a Lee Corso or any of these guys, right? Like he is just brought in to be Jordan. And if you don't want to hear from Jordan, mute the television, because as a wrestling fan, you do not need the commentary to know what's going on. We are a very specific group of people where you can watch a game or you can watch a match on mute, right? It's not like football, it's not like baseball. We know for the most part what's happening normally. And
But
if
we don't know
Sometimes
how
it's better that way.
we don't know
sometimes it
how
is.
we don't know how grippy it is if we don't have the play-by-play with John on it though.
Yeah, yeah. But like, and that's the thing. It's like everybody wants to go, bro. He makes it about himself. Like, and call me out of my bias because he's one of my favorite human beings on the planet. But like anytime that I speak to him, it's not about him. It's about his family. It's about wrestling. It's about all these other guys and how he sees competition. he talked to me at NCAAs about the level of competition at NCAAs and how these guys are elevating and how he wants to wrestle these younger guys and see how he stacks up as a now 36-year-old, right? Like he wants those things as a competitor, but like he's not sitting there and be like, well, yeah, I had to cut down to 3 meals and I had to do this and I had to do that. It doesn't happen. I ask him about him, and that's when he comes up in those conversations. But Jordan's a super humble guy, man. And you sit and talk to him. He's definitely a humble guy and he's a family guy. And that's really truly what it is. So it's pretty funny that like people get on forums and go pretty wild like that.
I just can't imagine having the perspective to, whether it's Jordan Burroughs or John Smith or Dan Gable or whatever legends have gotten on the microphone and given us some insight into what they see in the training, and anything time that happens, to be like, this guy,
Yeah.
what's his deal, huh? Like, no, just shut up and listen. It could be pretty cool. So, or mute it. There's options, is the point.
Yeah, it's a lot of stupidity. But no, I mean, when
This is the episode where we just yell at our listeners.
that this is really what it is. Like this is everything that has been bothering us lately. Because normally, we can talk about things that are happening on the mat or what's going to be coming up, and we'll obviously dig into uh, the Olympic formats and the brackets and stuff like that later on. But right now, it's just a lot of talk and a lot of bullshit. So
Mhm.
we're gonna bullshit too, and the only unfortunate thing for them is we have microphones and cameras and we're going to sit here and talk about it because we can. But like there's just a ton of stupidity in the game right now and I can't stand it. And in the spirit of being the old man shaking my fist at clouds like we talked about last week, I'm going to, start screaming to get off my lawn essentially because these guys are a bunch of idiots talking about asterisks or Jordan Bros makes it about himself or nope.
If we're gonna give out asterisks, can we just give one to the entire ball draw area? Because that was the dumbest fucking rule set
That was
in the
wild.
history of our sport.
That was really wild.
But we're not gonna put an asterisk next to that. Oh, they drew the blue ball. This guy gets an advantage. But no, it's wild.
Yeah, like the amount of stupidity we have seen in wrestling is crazy. But like everyone's just like, well, those are the rules. Okay.
Hey, and you know who who won that time too? Still Jordan Burroughs.
Yeah, still Jordan Burroughs.
He
And
In
figured
an
it out.
ASIC singlet.
Yeah.
in an A6 in a ripped ASIC singlet on a broken ankle.
Yes.
And one year he had his whole head wrap because his ear blew up on the mat. Remember that? I think that was the
Right.
first title he won.
I think it was. Yeah.
That was a lot of blood.
That was awesome. The Jordan Burroughs head wrap is iconic. It's
Second to the
just there.
sock pool.
I was
in my
just gonna
opinion.
say,
Oh yeah, you don't mess with the sock pool. How he doesn't have a sock deal is beyond me, but that's talk to his
The,
agent.
the funny thing about that is that when people started to draw attention to the fact that he does that, and then you saw him do it at like trials this year against Nolf or against Messenbrink, and the Penn State crowd obviously knows best, so they started booing him for adjusting his socks. Like, we know what this tactic is. His socks are fine. Yeah, but
Oh, don't let
he's
him reframe his mind. Don't let
yeah,
that.
like he's a seasoned vet here, guys. Like he's not the only person that takes his time getting back to the center of the mat. It just so happens that he's got a famous way of doing it that we know about. Other guys, they just kind of stall in getting back to the mat. Like, hell, if you really think that's bad, watch any of these tournaments, these international tournaments, when a Russian wrestler is losing. Watch them get back to the center. The amount of politicking they do and shrugging and pointing to their it's ridiculous. You will beg for a sock pull if you if you watch some of these international tournaments. And then the coaches that get involved, I'll never forget going to Eureka and how the coaches got involved in needing their guy to just like catch his breath when the fan favorite didn't win. They started throwing stuff on the mat. Like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. It was wild. It was seriously incredible. So
Just vodka bottles and wool hats all over.
there were, I'll net like there was a water bottle that was thrown from like the top balcony, and it like bounced and just exploded all over the mat. It was really bad. It was absolutely horrible. And they just kept like chucking water. I might still have the video on my phone somewhere where like we saw the first one come, and me and Mike Mal just started filming, and next thing you know, they were just chucking water bottles like crazy onto the mat. So yeah, those stall tactics a little bit different than Jordan Burroughs pulling up his socks. So, and I'm sure that whoever it was in the forum was a Penn State fan probably who was not happy about the Jordan Burroughs sock pull.
Penn State fans since 2012. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, let's talk a little college wrestling right now, and I want to talk money and how you guys see this new rev share and all these different things coming into play when it comes to wrestling specifically. Obviously, I'm on a couple other podcasts where I talk about these things, but I specifically focus on football and basketball because those are the big revenue generating sports. But for the longest time, wrestling has been a sport that obviously benefits from those rev generating sports where it's, kind of subsidized by it. But now we're going to start to see some different things, and you're already seeing some of the facilities that are being built or stopped from being built because they're not sure if they have to reallocate funds and stuff like that. Outside of that, what are your thoughts on how this is going to affect wrestling when it starts to really take effect in 2025?
We always worry about the smaller programs. I mean, the larger schools with larger programs, larger athletic budgets aren't going to feel the impact as much. But a smaller school, who has to dictate even more of that small budget to their revenue generating sports is going to have a much bigger impact. And that's one of the better things about wrestling is you can have small schools with successful teams, successful wrestlers, national champs, even though they're not coming from a power conference or a power team. And I'd hate to see that kind of go by the wayside because we have more money being redirected into places it doesn't necessarily need to go.
Yeah, I don't. I wish I had a well thought out answer, man. I don't know, and I think my answer is just I don't know because I didn't the last 2 3 years since NIL deals have started and everything else. It's just again we're going to use that cliche term, the Wild West. It's just been insane. There's just money getting thrown around to anybody. We talked recently about that kid in Florida who was suing because he thought he was going to get money that he didn't get. Like it's just I don't know. I don't have a clue. I can't. I don't. I'm not a smart enough man to know what potential outcomes or things can happen, and I'm comfortable with that. Um, the hope at the end of the day, I mean, this might be cliche too, but like, I know like Gardner Webb is Double Dog Days, and I know George Mason just did a big fundraiser. I mean, it's almost more imperative for the people that have the means to just donate directly to these programs and to make sure they're really continuing to support them. I think that's as far as an actionable item, the first and only thing we can really control at this time. And yeah, you just hope long term that these athletic directors are on the up and up, and they're being pretty open with the non-revenue generating sports on how this is going to affect them and allow them to make some long-term plans.
Yeah, I got just to piggyback on that, kind of tying in what you see on forums and social media stuff from before. When Because I'm a small school guy, come from Drexel Small School. I covered EIWA, IVs, smaller schools in comparison to, the Big 12, Big Tens, obviously. So I have maybe a bit of a bias towards the small schools, and kind of what you guys are saying. This is big schools. It's going to affect them more. Small schools are suffering. But I see people say that, and I see a response of, "Oh, these small schools, they need to try harder to fundraise." It's like some of that's like the dumbest answer because these people try so hard to fundraise, and they still have no shot at keeping up with a Penn State, and Ohio State, and Iowa. It's just they're not the same playing field, and I think NIL is going to be worse off for those schools ultimately in the long run for the small schools. But yeah, just kind of tying back in the forum and Twitter sphere talk, these small schools need to fundraise hard. They need to work harder. It's like, okay, they can do everything they can, but they can't make one phone call and get $40 million like Oklahoma State did. So there's a big difference there between these schools.
In more
Um,
oil money. That's where we went wrong.
yeah, and to kind of add on to this point here, I was talking to, and I'm not sure if this is all publicized yet, so I'll try and be general, but talking to someone who is in athletic department for a big school, which I won't name. Um, Starting next season, they have to start to tier all their sports: tier one, tier two, and tier three. Obviously, football and basketball are going to be tier one. I'm assuming this is revenue based, money based, something.
Mhm.
And then tiers two and three are still kind of to be determined. So I think this is kind of getting involved with that, paying athletes a percentage of the overall revenue, and some of stuff we were talking about last week. Um, yeah, so I'm not sure exactly what that means. They're still unsure. I don't know if that's coming from the conference. Say, hey, these sports are in tier one, these sports are in tier two, or if every university is going to make these tiers based on, funding resources for their sport at that school.
It's like a way to
Um,
differentiate like the third string diver from the starting quarterback.
it could be, or payments per athlete too. That's another thing he was telling me about at the school he's at now. They're actually starting to do that. They're paying these athletes X amount per semester. A percentage of that goes to them directly, and the rest of that for the semester goes into a bank account they can't touch until they graduate.
Do
So
they
there's
have to
things.
actually graduate? Because that'd be a really cool rule.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't know, but again, this is all kind of general stuff that's kind of starting to come to fruition that these athletic departments are starting to think about here.
It's all still
Um,
new.
yeah, it's still so new. So again, the tiered system, I'm not sure what that means exactly. I'm sure it's some kind of pay scale for these schools. Um, and then
It
yeah,
just
I thought
cracks it just cracks me up that they were like, all right, we're gonna have tier one up here, and that's gonna be these big money makers. And then these other two, I don't know yet, but it's
yeah,
gonna be something.
yeah. Again, he wasn't. I think he's
You
on
just
the
But it
need to
won't be
know
as
where to
much as
athletic.
put
these
these.
ones.
Yeah, he's on the athletic training, I think, physical therapy side. So again, he doesn't make these decisions. He just kind of
Right, yeah.
hears, talk about it. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. If like, oh, the football guys get X amount, they're tier one. What does tier three get? They get, crumbs to the dollar there. But
They pay
Now
us
look,
actually.
I was
that'd be nice. Yeah.
a
Yeah.
very mediocre athlete at a small NAIA school. I was very happy to get a partial scholarship and some books paid for. I
It's not
certainly
enough
wasn't
anymore.
getting any
Yeah.
pizza money on the side. So, I mean, clearly there's a huge argument about the value in this and whether it's deserved or how this all should actually work as far as paying the athletes. And I'm not necessarily against paying the athletes, but there's so many moving parts in it, and I feel like we've just dove into this huge pool and nobody knows what the hell's going on, and now everybody's just kind of floundering in the deep end trying to figure things out, and we're probably going to end up having a lot of people at the bottom of that deep end because nobody knows what's going on. So it's a weird spot to be in right now.
I feel like it's exactly what the NCAA wanted to. Like
Yeah.
when NIL happened, they were like, "Oh, you guys have been fighting for this for a long time. Okay, here you go. No regulations. We'll figure it out as we go." The only real stipulation that was out there was that schools couldn't pay the athletes. Like did give some parameters, right? Like it wasn't coming from the schools. The schools couldn't be involved in any of the NIL deals. All those had to be separate collectives, and the coaches couldn't be involved and all kinds of stuff. But I feel like they wanted the chaos because it was like, okay, if we just allow this to explode, we'll figure out what we want, what's really good, and what we don't want, and we'll punish that and say, okay, well, that was something that wasn't good. And now you're going to be punished for it because we've seen where maybe some teams or some schools step over the line a little bit. And we can get into that next, but where some teams have stepped over the line a little bit with NIL, and they're like, oh well, wait a second, step too far, here's a sanction, right? So they're just kind of making the rules up as they go, and now things are going to severely change because the schools can pay the athletes now, and it's all rev share. So like when I think, what Austin's saying about different tiers, I'm thinking, say the Iowas, the Penn States, the Oklahoma States, they're signing these big network deals. And something that's happening here in Texas is we have the Longhorn Network, which is where basically all the sports are being shown. And it kind of like really upset the apple cart because they were supposed to be part of, what is it, the Big 12 network, and there's just a whole bunch of craziness. But the Longhorn Network is going to be coming back. And it was, one of those deals that kind of upset the big networks that wanted UT to be playing on, on their channels. But when I look at it, and like I said, with Austin saying is, that tiers are possibly a thing, it's like, okay, well, football and basketball, we know are going to be up here. And when it comes to the deal that we're signing, those are the teams that the deals are truly centralized around. But then we also get, wrestling and volleyball and swimming and all these other ones. So if the brunt of the money that we're being paid is for the rights of our football team, our basketball team, and maybe our softball team, if you're Oklahoma, these other sports that are in these other tiers will have this amount of money allocated to it. And we are able to reallocate throughout the year if need be. That's what it sounds like to me, is that they just want to be able to say, all right, we need this really big pool of money for our tier ones and then our tier twos and our tier threes. So it's kind of a trickle down effect that they're kind of looking at. But I mean, I like the tier system. So it forces them to figure out how much money they need. And then ultimately, say wrestling is a tier 3 sport for them, then the Iowas, the Penn States, the Oklahoma States can say, okay, well, we have this amount of donor money. So even though it's a tier 3 sport, we can utilize the donor money to pay as many coaches as we want. Because one of the other things that came into effect with this is unlimited coaches. Now, like, and it just starts in football where you can label anybody an analyst and they can now coach. Whereas before you were an analyst and all you could really do was analyze. You weren't
You
able
could
to,
not coach.
could not coach essentially on the field. But if you were an analyst, you were able to talk to the coaches and everything else. You couldn't coach directly with the athletes. But now that's going to change, where literally anybody that is on staff can coach any player that they want, no matter what their title is, as long as they're on staff. So I can't wait to see how these things trickle down to other sports. But if the tier system does take over, it's going to be interesting, and we're going to truly see how the money starts to get allocated when it comes to the system that they're looking at implementing.
Well, and again, just one last point on that. There might be some schools in wrestling like Iowa, Penn State, Oklahoma State, where their programs are a tier 2 or tier 1, thing. If it has something to do with revenue being brought in or tickets sold or whatever it is, I mean those programs typically do pretty well already. It's not probably at the same scale, obviously, but if you're selling out arenas, if with what you have, then I think that's noteworthy as well.
Yeah. So something that I kind of glossed over, but wanted to get to, and it's a question that we actually had on last week's episode. There was two questions posed by one guy. I don't know if you saw it on YouTube, but he was talking about the Coleman Scott rumors and his allegations of, stealing money or whatever else, which I have no proof of. I don't. And yes, I have known Coleman for a very long time. So call me out if you think that I'm biased, but I have to literally report on things that I have proof of. So it can't be a he said, she said type of a thing. Like when the whole Chamizo being able to wrestle at the Olympics came out, it was an Instagram post, and I was getting ready to write an article and post it to InterMat, and I said, "Well, wait, I can't find this news anywhere else. So until I have, solid proof of this, I cannot say one way or the other that he's in or that he's out." Obviously, glad that we waited, reached out to Olenowski with UWW and talked to Jason Bryan and some other people to make some connections. And ultimately, we got the news. So, with all that stuff, I honestly do not know whether money was stolen. I don't know if money was taken and given back. I don't know. I haven't seen anything. All I know is it's a bunch of he said, she said. And while I trust the people that I am speaking to, I still can't report on what my friends are saying. It's just really bad journalism to say, well, this person said this and this person said this. It just doesn't make any sense. So that was one of the questions. And then the other one was there's supposedly a team that has been turned in by three other teams for recruiting athletes that are not in the transfer portal. I do not know what the team is. I believe that I don't know who it is. So I'm not even going to speculate. I'm not even going to go there. But if this is true, if this is happening, more will obviously come out about it. But if this is true, do you guys think that anything happens if it is true that any team was poaching an athlete?
Yeah. Gotta do anything.
All
I,
head
you know,
shakes,
I wish I
all
had more
knows.
faith that like there would be some, follow through and sanctions, and because clearly like NIL, I'm sure is difficult enough to have to re-recruit your own athletes, let alone outside of any particular window or transfer portal designation, right? Like if they're just getting calls from people, like that's kind of messed up, and there absolutely should be some sort of a violation or sanction. Um, I mean, it might be like just what you said, though, right? It might be a he said, she said. They're, coaches are saying these people are doing it, and then the coaches are like, nope, we're not doing that. Must have
Yeah.
been somebody else. So,
Yeah, from what I have been told and heard, and according to the question that was on the our video from last week, three teams turned in one program. So, like I said, whether or not that's true, I haven't seen any reporting on it or anything um, that backs that up. If you're listening to this and you have proof of it, reach out to us. We're all on Twitter. Send us a message. Get us the evidence. But I haven't seen it. And like you guys, I don't really think that much is going to happen because in my nearly 10 years of covering wrestling, heard of a lot of different rumors and allegations, and not one sanction do I remember ever happening in wrestling. Never really heard about it. You,
I've heard
you
some head coaches yell at each other about it,
heard a yep, I
but
heard a lot of that.
I don't see any sanctions coming.
Never.
There'll
So
definitely
I
be
don't know.
some tense conversations in the tunnels, but yeah, no. I mean,
I'd be yelling too. That's my livelihood.
yeah, I mean it's completely understood, and it's not. I don't know. The thing with me, like, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say which programs I've heard things from and which wrestlers, and it's in reference to. But I can say for sure that I know multiple programs have had wrestlers contacted by a couple of the same teams.
Yes.
So
Repeat offenders.
yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'll be upfront about this. I mean, there were talks, and I think Kevin and I may have talked about this before. There were talks when we were at NCAAs about, oh, where do you think this kid's going to be at next year? Right? Where do you think that he stays? Do you think that he goes? You know,
You hear it with like the surprise All Americans all the time. Like
I
the
mean,
one
and
kid.
it was, I mean, let's call it what it is. Neil Arisman called it out during the presser. He was blatant about it, saying, "I've already heard of schools trying to get to some of my wrestlers," and those were the names, and that was the team that a lot of these people on the floor were talking about and circulating. And like I said, not naming any names, but
Can we use initials?
you hear a lot about that. uh I mean, in terms of people that were saying these things or asking these questions. um I mean, you obviously know who these wrestlers are at Little Rock that are going to be getting poached, right? um but like, they were apparently getting calls before the NCAA tournament even happened, right? And I'm glad that, with all of the transfer portal craziness, that Nasir Bailey and Stephen Little are still going to be in the lineup in Little Rock, because Neil Arisman is a great coach, and he deserves to continue to build on what he is building already in the short amount of time. But to think that poaching doesn't happen, it's just kind of crazy to think that these phone calls aren't being made from this donor three times removed is insane, right? Like, so yes, it certainly does happen. And if a school was turned in by three other schools and there's truth to it, and it's investigated, and we find out that it did happen, then some sanctions need to come down. It shouldn't be. That's the funny thing, is wrestling is always treated like completely different than other sports. Because if it happened in football, you would know about it immediately. It wouldn't be a whisper down the alley type of a thing. You wouldn't see the normal people that are the heads of the rumor mill stirring shit up. And that's just what happens in wrestling. Whereas in football, it it hits ESPN quickly. It's on the ticker. It's on First Take. It's all over, right? So I'm hopeful that it's not treated any differently than in any other sport, and that if these things are going on, that that there is a crackdown of these sort of things. The only thing that you certainly cannot really stop from happening is wrestlers talking to other wrestlers. That's the only thing that you can't stop from happening, because all these guys have mostly been growing up together and wrestling against each other and competing against each other for a very long time. So they've all been talking, they've all trained together. But if donors are starting to make phone calls, if coaches are, volunteer assistants are starting to make phone calls or send text messages or DMs or responding to an Instagram story, or, being vague about certain things, then yeah, investigate it, check it out, see what's really happening in these situations, and crack down on it. Because, like I said, I want to see more programs like Little Rock, not less, getting All Americans on the podium.
Sanctions only happen in the tier one programs. They don't trickle down to tier 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's how that works, right?
Yep.
No, I mean, if there, I didn't see any other questions underneath last week's video. So, but no, like, there are questions. If you're watching this and you have a question for us, throw it in there. I
Yeah, I
try
like
to
this.
I try to pay attention to those things. Or tweet us, DM us, whatever. There's a good amount of people that do watch these, surprisingly. I don't know.
We gotta not
Everybody.
step on Jagger's corner though. I do not want to get on
Ooh.
that guy's bad side.
No, nope. Nope, I do not want to do that. What we might be able to do is see what he's responding to, and maybe we'll have our own takes on what Jagger is saying. We'll go Jagger on Jagger and
He'll cut
see.
your head off in the first 5 minutes.
I know. He's a dangerous man.
He
No,
doesn't leave the
but
state of New Jersey though, so if you're not in New Jersey, you're probably all right.
not
Yeah.
anymore. No, no.
We went up for Final X. What's it? 2 years ago when it was at Beat the Streets event.
Yeah.
I went up with Earl and Jagger was supposed to meet us, and the dude wouldn't even cross the river. Like, just
Mhm.
come on, man.
Yeah, but no, like I said, keep the questions coming. If there is something out there in the rumor mill, I mean, some things you see will have to be vague about because let's call it what it is. It is we are still the wrestling community. It is treated differently. You know, you allow news to be broken by the teams. You know, as much as people try to be Adam Schefter in this world, you're not. So allow, things are allowed to come out. News is allowed to be broken in different ways in wrestling. But if we can speak to it, we certainly will speak to it. And I'm not going to shy away from that. We all talk to a bunch of people in wrestling, and we all talk to a bunch of people in general that are involved that could have some sort of insight that we could relay. So keep the questions coming. Really like, being able to address certain things that we haven't already addressed. If we have addressed it and you don't like our takes, tell us anyway. I don't really give a shit. I want to hear about it, right?
So put it
Like,
on the forum.
yeah,
Yeah, put it on the forum for
if you put it
sure.
on the forum, I'll never see it ever, ever. I've never even. I think I had a login on a forum back in the day when I was in high school, one of the District 11 forums, and I
Oh,
saw
I
a
was on
couple
that
of
too.
I saw a couple of things on there about me, and I was like, this is poison for the brain. Get me out of this world. I never want to read this ever again. So that was probably the last time that, because, person like Willie, he wants to go in and continue to shit talk. Person like me, I want to fight everybody. So they're we're two very different individuals. So when it comes to the forums, I just stay out of them. But if there is something in the forums that you see, bring it to us. I'm not going to seek it out whatsoever. But gentlemen, you guys got anything else, or can we close out for the night?
Let's close it out.
Close it out. Well, as I said, this is officially the InterMat Wrestle podcast. So appreciate you guys listening, watching, making fun of us, talking shit on us, whatever it really is. Keep it
All
coming,
fair.
and we'll keep firing back. See ya.